Raul Rosas Jr., good fighter. Good fighter. I hadn't seen a lot of him. I read all about this young man, but I didn't see him. I thought he was 17. Now, I still think that I'm right about that. When they brought him on Dana White Contender Series, he must have been 17 because when he walked out on Saturday, he was 18. But I seem to remember somewhere in my mind him being a minor and he was fighting. I remember seeing an article on this because they even talked about what the commission had to do as it pertained to his parents and things that they had assigned. That's a lot of details for me to remember for it not to be true. And quite frankly, if he's 18, there's no story. He becomes the youngest, but there's no story there. You either took a high school kid that's the youngest guy, and it's almost like a Roberto Duran story, or there's no headline here, in my opinion. Now, I only bring that to you because you've got this young guy, and boy, guys, he's good. He's good. Regardless of what you saw, he's good. He was doing a shot to what we call a reshot. Now, that is a very high-level college-type technique. To use your first shot, which gets stuffed, but instead of getting frustrated and starting over like every jiu-jitsu guy and every MMA guy on earth, you have a wrestler's mindset, which is the first shot is just to get me close enough to take the second shot, which is I'm only doing to set up the one that's going to work, which is my third shot. It's called chain wrestling. Very difficult to do. It is the most exhaustive thing that you can do in the sport from a cardio standpoint. And this game of I touch you and you don't touch me, at the same time as being played with, I take your energy while I preserve mine. So I bring that to you because he did get tired, and he broke, and he quit. That's what happens when you reach exhaustion. Now, I bring his age into this, because with age, we're also talking about inexperience. Where does he go from here? That was a lesson. That was a lesson in life that very few people get taught. Many of you have seen it. You've witnessed it. Very, very few of you have ever gone through it. I mean, why would you? Why would you? What is it that you would have done that would have put you in a position where you were fighting for your life with every bit of energy you have and a consequence if you didn't do it? There is a consequence of a guy dropping elbows on your skull. There is a consequence of him grabbing your neck and strangling you. There's a consequence. So why would you ever have experienced it, right? I didn't say it to condescend. I said it to open your eyes so that you can really be aware of this. Because it is the most vulnerable position that young man has ever been in. And for the rest of his time on this earth, that will be the most vulnerable position he's ever been in. How does he deal with it? I have seen equal amount of guys use that as a springboard, as a lesson, and catapult themselves up. But I have seen just as many get to that point and realize I never want to be there again. You feel so helpless, so scared, so worried, so out of them. You're just hanging on. You're not even trying to win. You openly are not trying to win. You are just trying to survive. It's very rare. You saw 11 fights on Saturday night. You did not see another opponent have to do that. It was only him. So is he going to look at, because you got to understand, right? He's been training for 10 years, right? Let's just do the math. He's been training for 10 years. So in 10 years of intense training, his cardio is of such that he can go hard for 5 minutes. There's 10 more minutes in these fights. 20 more minutes if he makes it to where he wants in the championship fights. But you see the problem, 10 years of training, where he's at, is he's good for 5 minutes. So what do? Do we need another decade? And if we do, and we do everything, we do another decade, then you can get to 10 minutes because we still got a minimum of 15, right? I mean, do you see where this becomes a problem? Now, the other side of the coin is it just becomes an understanding. It does not matter how hard you prepare, you will top out. It doesn't matter how hard you run, you will top out. It doesn't matter how much you lift, you will top out. It doesn't matter how much you sleep or what you eat on nutrition. You're going to reach your max. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got a ceiling. You now have to find a way to take that 5 minutes of energy that we saw in the first round and extend that over 15. And that's where the game comes in. I do not need to go out and destroy you in the first round. I just need to beat you. That's it. That's what a 10-9 is. And now I can come out in the second round and I can just barely beat you, but now I've used the same amount of energy. The same energy that I used to absolutely control you, absolutely dominate you. I could have extended and done enough to beat you. Get into the third round, I got a little bit left to protect myself and run out the clock. This is how you start to win a match. Now, Dan Gable is the first athlete who brought the idea of conditioning as a tactical standpoint in sport. He did it in the 1972 Olympics. And all of his teammates saw how hard he trained and saw that he was weaponizing pace. And they took those ideas and took them all around the country and started building this up through wrestling programs. Eventually got into football programs. They quit calling timeout. They get right back to the line. Quit calling timeout. Quarterback calls to get right back to the line. They just got other teams tired. Seems very obvious to you guys, but I am going to trace it back to Dan Gable because it's very important. If he's the one that started it, then what he thinks most certainly matters. And Dan Gable said about himself, I used to just go as hard as I could. Non-stop pace, but eventually I had to learn how to win a match. Going hard does not get you points. That was Coach Gable's message. Outworking your opponent doesn't get you points. And this game is predicated on a score differential. Because no matter how good a shape you're in, you have to do some things that get points. You have to know when to shut down. You got to know when to control real estate, when to grab a wrist, when to get a breath. And those are just the things that Rosa doesn't yet know. In his mind, with the resistance that he's felt and his experience leading to this, it was very little. In his mind, with his experiences, he can go 100%. And that guy won't still be standing. And now he's learned that energy has got to extend. And in many other sports, you will see a variation of what I'm talking about. Usain Bolt, by example, has been in the lead in track and field. He's looked back, seen the competition, and you watch him. You watch him pull up. He doesn't give it his all. Why wouldn't he give it his all? Why wouldn't he just get from this point to that point as fast as he possibly can? That would seem to make a level sense. Well, he wanted to save some energy. That's why. He doesn't need to beat these guys by 2 seconds. He just needs to beat those guys. And it's a very important lesson in life. I see people do it all the time. I see it in show business. I see promoters do it within this sport. They want to put on the absolute best show they can. You don't need to put on the absolute best show you can. You got to put on a show that's absolutely better than your competition. You got more bullets in the chamber. Save them. Save the money. Save the effort. Wait until they rise up. It's one of these things. And where is Rosa going to go? That's the battle that he's going to have to ask himself right now. He is not going to want to get back to that point. But is that enough to make a guy check out? Is that enough to fear a guy? Right? A combat athlete's biggest fear isn't losing. His biggest fear is exhaustion. Rosa had never got there. He'd never been that exhausted. Now he has. It's a learning lesson. I will tell you guys, he's very good. Very good. Very good techniques. I love that pressure that he has. But when he puts that pressure and he gets on top of a guy and he's winning the round, sometimes you've got to understand that. To win a round by a whole bunch, still gets you a 10 and it gets him a 9. To win a round by a little bit, gets you a 10 and it gets you a 9. That's the game that you got to play. He's got to learn to extend, make that battery last. That's the lesson that he learned on Saturday.